Hello. Today we're gonna talk about audit evidence. We've analyzed auditing. Let's go through the different stages of audit work, all right? From a different perspective, from a working perspective, a modeling perspective. We talked about it, right? So for auditors, their biggest concern is their financial, if their audit opinion is wrong, right? So auditors' goal is to because auditors don't do full scope 100% auditing, so there's never a chance auditors is going to reach 100% assurance about what they're going to talk about regarding clients' financial statements. So auditors' goal is to reduce the probability that their audit opinion is incorrect to a certain level, to a very low level. We can think about it. Big auditors, they have more to lose, so they might reduce this probability through their work and everything else to 0.01%, for example. And the small auditors, they don't have too much to lose, and they have every client is more important to them than to big auditors. So they might reduce their probability, they might accept a probability of 1% of their financial, of their audit opinion being wrong, right? So that's kind of different. So auditors, they have this in mind, right? Audit firms, they know, hey, what is the lowest, what is the highest probability that I can accept? I need to control the probability of audit opinion being wrong equal to or below that threshold. So auditors have this in mind, audit risk in mind. Audit risk equals to inherent risk multiplied with control risk multiplied with detection risk. We talked about what these are already, right? So when there's a new client or when there's an existing client, auditors look at the client, understand their background information, their industry information, or they know from previous working experience with the client already, and others. All the facts assess their inherent risk. Right? If inherent risk is too high already, auditors might just reject this client. Hey, you're too risky for us. To really make us comfortable to, from our perspective, to make the risk of our opinion being wrong to a certain percentage, right? So that we can accept. We need to do too much work and it's going to be too expensive. We can either we don't we may not be able to afford so much uh, resources to help you, or you might not be able to pay us because it's too expensive, requires too much, right? So auditors, right, they drop some clients because clients' inherent risk are just too high, right? Right? If they determine if inherent risks are not that high, or they think through their work they can control after they test control risk and the test reduce detection risk to a certain level, they think and they can reduce at a reasonable price. You can reduce probability of their audit opinion being wrong or the risk to a certain level, low level. So auditors may accept clients. So auditors were making this decision. All right. So after this, auditors will gather test internal control, get an understanding of how good internal control is, right? If internal control is really good, then inherent risk is low. If internal control is really bad, not working, then control risk is really high. Okay, so auditors understand, right? Understand that, right? So you have audit risk on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, we are supposed to have inherent risk, control risk, and detection risk, right? So auditors set their audit risk already, the audit risk they can accept. And if we know inherent risk and we know control risk, then we must be able to figure out the detection risk. What is detection risk? The risk that auditors cannot, through their work, do their work, still cannot catch material misstatements. Okay, so this is what we are talking about. The harder auditors work, the lower detection risk is going to be. All right, the less they work, the harder, the more likely there's going to be mistakes uncaught, not caught. Right. So other things being equal, if either inherent risk is high or control risk is high, or both are too high, that means to achieve the same or the risk, detection risk must be really low, right? Detection risk could be really low means auditors need to do a lot of work, okay? So what is work we are talking about? For example, auditors try to understand the inherent risk, right? Then auditors may, how do we get an understanding of inherent risk? Client may tell you, right? Client may appear to be in certain business. Client may tell you that we changed our operation system. Client may tell you that we are operating internationally. That's what the clients are telling you, right? You need to verify it. How do you verify? You will check the registration. You check whether they really have a new system coming in. Those used to verify what you were told or what you were presented with. We call it evidence. So when auditors are assessing inherent risk, they need to they need to collect evidence, right? How auditors assess control risk again? Auditors understand whether clients have such control in place or not, right? Then auditors need to see, because having control in place doesn't mean it's working. You have to make sure it's working, right? So auditors do check evidences again to make like invoices, logging log, those things to make sure, hey, control is really working. So evidence is required again, because auditors, clients may tell you how good their control is, but as an auditor, you cannot just take their word. You have to check. How do you check? By benchmarking what you were told, what you were compared with, what you were presented with, to something you can really verify or more concrete. Okay? And at the stage where auditors work hard to reduce detection risk, it's the same, right? Auditors are checking numbers. Numbers will show up on financial statements. So auditors are presented with numbers, told numbers by the clients, right? How do we know those clients, the numbers are right, are correct, are truthful? Of course, auditors need to check invoices, inventory records, bank statements, all those things, confirmation letters, which we're going to talk about, all those things, we see those are evidences. So in those audit work, evidences through the whole process, right? I often tell people, when I was in college, around the time, it was a gold age, right? Gold age for those lawyers episodes, Law and Order. I'm not sure if they're still on show or not. And Chicago Law, whatever those stuff, a lot, Law and Order stuff. And it detects shows, right? CSI, those related things, right? Dexter, whatever. Anyway, 24 hours, a lot of things. And I often tell people, right, if you think about it, right, audit work might be boring, appears to be, and then less heroic. But indeed, there's not too much difference between audit work and detective, because or cops, or police works, or lawyers, whatever you call it, involved with law, right? Because what they are doing, what auditors are doing, we have to compare what we were told, what we were given, and what we were presented with to what can support or invalidate the aforementioned things, right? So it's quite similar. And if you think about it, right, it's not too different, right? Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Details are presented in the notes already, right? Let's give you some examples, right? So let me give you a hypothetical theory. Okay, let's pick someone. What's the name? Right, Marty. I always like Marty. I was a big fan of Back to the Future when I was a kid. Still am, I guess. So let's say Marty here comes to our university, right? Marty studies at the university, but he has a side hobby. He has a side hobby, to pay his tuition. He occasionally, illegally, not so lawfully, sell, herbal entertainment stuff, okay, to other people, to the fellow students, okay. Then one day Marty was busted, and it was solid evidence. So Marty was trying to convince the judge to give him a chance, right? So he needs to call somebody to basically show the judge he's a good kid, right? So Marty has a few options, right? Marty was thinking, okay. Marty told the lawyer, I can get my uncle. My uncle is a nice person, very respected in the community, or I can get the priest. All right, I can get a priest. If I can just pick one, who should I pick? Which one do you think, right? Normally speaking, we should pick priest. Why uncle would not be a good idea? Because uncle is an insider, family member. Normally, your uncle would lie for you, right? So if uncle was used as evidence to show that Marty can be a better person, then this evidence lacks credibility, or we say reliability, because it's not reliable. We cannot rely on this piece of evidence because here the reason is insider, right? For the same stuff, we should need to consider evidence, whether it's reliable or not. Okay, that's one thing. And then Marty said, you know what, right? I know a few lawyers. Currently, I go to a church, although I don't go there too often, but I know the priest, right? I know the priest. And 3 years ago, when I was living in another community, I went to the church every week. So I knew the church, the priest pretty well over there. So maybe we should pick one of the two, right? Let's decide who should be there. Who should you go for? Right? I would say that I go for the current priest. Why? Because that was 3 years ago, the other one. Although you met him more often, but that was 3 years ago. It's not so relevant. A lot of things changed during 3 years. And this current church priest is the current one. It's up to date and it's more relevant. Okay? See, that's when we talk about evidence, no matter it's law show, cop show, whatever stuff, it's always about two things we care about: the quality of evidence, right? They have to be relevance, and they have to be reliable or credible, or reliability or credibility, right? On top of that, we talk about getting more evidence. For example, you can indeed get your uncle and get the priest. That's fine, right? They are different. But if you got your uncle, you said, okay, let me get more evidence, right? Let me get my auntie, let me get my nephew, let me get my niece. Then it's redundant because they are all from family. You have one side from the family showing you are good, you're fine already. The others from family, they're repetitive, right? They're redundant. They're not useful. They're not adding too much, right? So when we are in auditing, we do the same, right? So when we talk about evidence, we talk about, okay, how much evidence we need. Remember, auditing, as far as I know, for Big Four, they are for profit. For profit means that you got to control your cost. Under the premise that you don't sacrifice quality, you control your cost, okay? So that is what we mean. You control your cost, you don't do too much work. So we need to understand what is sufficient audit evidence. You need sufficient. You might go a little bit more above sufficient, but you never do too much because it's going to eat the profits. And the second, quality, right? We talk about quantity, now it's quality. Quality, if you have to be reliable, they have to be relevant. So those are we talk about, right? Evidence. And all the evidence is the same, right? When we have all the evidence, we know that if you obtain the evidence yourself, it's going to be more reliable compared to another channel, right? And if it's from an independent side rather than an insider from a third party, it's going to be reliable. And if it's from a more authority figure, it's going to be more reliable as well, right? And if it's written, it's more reliable than verbal as well. Can you see that, right? So relevance, we know if you talk about if you talk about AR account, sales might be relevant, but obviously loan won't be too relevant, right? Loan information won't be too relevant. So we gotta understand these, right? That is for us to determine, but junior auditors don't really have to think too much, right? Don't have to think too much. Usually your senior will tell you what to do. Your senior will tell you what to do and what evidence to collect, which period you need to collect, okay? That's all we need. One thing I gotta mention is, we can talk about it later, I guess, right? We can be able to talk about it in the video, but check the chapter 6 handouts. With this video, I think you can get a more solid understanding of what we're gonna talk about. Once we finish chapter 6, we're gonna have our first exam, okay? All right, thank you very much. Bye-bye.